I'm excited now to introduce Mr. Mark Taller, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Progress. Mark, it's great to have you on.
Well, thanks very much. It's good to be here.
Excellent. Well, take it away.
Thank you. So, as mentioned, my name is Mark Taller. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager, but really more of a product expert here at Progress. And my focus is on a tool called WhatsUp Gold, which I will get to in a minute. But what we really want to do is talk to you today about how we're seeing transformation in network monitoring and IT solutions for both education and government agencies. Historically, WhatsUp Gold's actually been very strong in those industries, so we're very much aware of what's happening to the organizations that are either operating schools or universities or school boards and the various government agencies out there as well. And they've got some specific unique requirements. Very quickly, I'm going to go over some of the challenges for those organizations. We're going to look at 5 best practices that we've determined are really helping our customers, and we're going to go into a little detail, of course, on how WhatsUp Gold specifically can help that. And just so you know, it's not vaporware, I'm going to give you some actual examples before we stop for a little Q&A. So this list could look a little generic, but there are some specific and unique challenges that face both government agencies and educational organizations. And the 2 big ones are budget and compliance. Everyone's under tight budgets, that's standard, but with government and with education, you're really working on shoestrings. I think Scott mentioned talking about old legacy equipment that hasn't been replaced in 20 or 30 years. That's not at all uncommon, and you often find these organizations have IT teams or sometimes even just IT individuals who are being tasked regularly with doing more with less. And as mentioned with COVID, we've seen an explosion of remote work, an explosion of video, the introduction of Teams and Zoom that are just absolutely consuming bandwidth, and that's creating a whole bunch of new challenges, especially when there hasn't been any budget for new equipment or new people. The other piece, of course, is compliance. And again, individual organizations in other industries may or may not have specific compliance requirements, but there are ones that apply specifically to government and to a lesser extent to education that they have to comply with. And not only do they have to comply with those regulations, they have to show that they're meeting them, and they have to be able to prove that they're meeting them, because the consequences for doing that are absolutely dire. And again, that's a big challenge, which again is simply compounded by the issue of working with lesser budgets and older equipment. The rest of it is stuff that honestly is going to challenge any organization. We're seeing a bit more of it specifically within governments and educational organizations, simply because of the nature of those industries. Virtual machines. Everyone's got virtualized tracking where those virtual machines are, what their physical associations are, where that bandwidth is going, what they're doing. That's key. Media being slow and streaming, end users complaining that their Zoom sessions are choppy or breaking up, constant issue. And a hard one to diagnose. Is that the problem with the remote individual somewhere out the sticks with a poor ISP and a poor connection, or is that something wrong with your network, and how do you figure that out? Related to that is measuring the bandwidth utilization, which really comes down to a single question of what happened to all of my bandwidth, where's it all going? Being able to figure that out, especially in an educational organization where often you have students or individual educators who aren't necessarily doing the same kind of thing as everyone else and are more likely to maybe stop for lunch and watch 4K videos from Netflix, which the system wasn't necessarily designed for. That's where you want to have a better understanding of what's going on with that. And then, of course, how do you figure all of this out, and how do you compile all this information? If you're getting information from multiple different monitoring tools and you have too many consoles to check out, that is severely going to degrade your performance, your ability to diagnose errors and to fix them. And that's a key issue. And then finally, and this is kind of cross-purpose to the budgetary issue I brought up recently, but it's not really when you think about it. One of the things that you always want to be doing is looking at whether or not you have underutilized resources. Are there unnecessary virtual machines? Do we have more bandwidth available that we're not using at certain times? Can we offload some of these recurring issues to off hours? That sort of information. If we can decommission certain machines, or if we can replace certain systems, that can result in either an easier environment for IT to manage, or it can result in cost savings. And just to give you an example of that, a classic one that we've seen was there was no budget to replace a bunch of servers in one educational organization we knew. And they were quite old, they were buggy, they were difficult to maintain, but the company that made them had almost the identical item in half the form factor. And one of the IT guys did the math and said, look, we can replace an entire rack of servers with half a rack of the new ones if we buy them. And yeah, it's going to cost a little bit of money, but here's the savings in the cooling and power. And that made up the budget shortfall. So being aware of that and understanding how to make those changes and understanding what those devices are can really make a difference in terms of not only getting newer equipment if you need to under the budget, but finding out where the inefficiencies are and how you can fix them. So with that said, let's take a look at some of the best practices that we've noticed. And the number one best practice, and really this isn't even a best practice, this is table stakes. You've got to discover your infrastructure. If you can't find it, you can't monitor it, and you can't manage it. Your network is a living, breathing thing. It's constantly changing. And whether those changes are planned or unplanned doesn't matter. If you don't know what is running, what's connected, what's dependent on what something else is, where those items are, and in what locations they are, you're just setting yourself up for failure. The first thing you need to do is a layer 2 or 3 discovery that will figure out what's connected to my network and map it out so you can see exactly where those items are. How something is connected is going to be half the time the answer as to why it's not working properly or why it's slow. So that's absolutely table stakes. Figure out what's going on. And then monitor that infrastructure. All right? The discovery is a snapshot. It's going to show you what's going on right at the moment you take that snapshot. It could change in 24 hours. It could change in 2. It could change in 10 minutes. Or it could stay stable for the next month or so. You're not going to know unless you're regularly monitoring the health and the availability and the performance of everything. And that's both wired and wireless, and I'm including cloud devices. Anything that's connected is something that you should be able to monitor. So whether those are servers, cloud resources, load balancers, specific applications, all of your virtual resources, it's really essential to understand what's going on a moment-by-moment basis. And most importantly, you want to be able to see everything in context. Every piece of equipment that you purchase or every service that you purchase is going to have some form of management tool, which is great, except now you're going through 15 different consoles trying to find the answer, and everything's finger pointing at everything else. The Meraki system says it's the AWS server, the AWS server says it's the Hyper-V system. You don't necessarily know. What you need is something that can show all of these systems, how they interrelate, and show them all in context. Because, in fairness, the Cisco management system is not necessarily designed to tell you what's going on with your Microsoft Azure cloud services. It's not its primary role. You want something that can show all of this. And using one tool is going to make a huge, huge difference. If it's all in one console, it's going to eliminate that finger pointing, and it's going to make it easier to diagnose issues and improve your mean time to repair. And this is a subtle difference, but I just said monitoring the infrastructure. You also need to monitor the traffic, both on your wired and wireless systems. And this is where it comes down to answering that question of what happened to all of my bandwidth. Where is your bandwidth going? Which users are consuming the bandwidth? And more importantly, why? I mentioned the example of someone, playing a 4K video or streaming 4K video from Netflix. That may be completely legitimate if it's a documentary that a teacher's showing in a classroom, or if it's something that's being used for an advertisement and people are showing it. There's a variety of reasons why people could be using massive amounts of bandwidth. You need to figure out which ones are legitimate, and then figure out how to optimize your systems so that you can make sure that they are getting the bandwidth they need, and you're getting alerted when they aren't getting the bandwidth they need. I won't pitch monitoring tools as a security tool, but honestly, the first notification usually that you're likely to be experiencing a DDoS attack is when your bandwidth starts to suffer. And if you're getting alerts when your bandwidth starts dropping, or when there's congestion or there's latency issues, that's one of the first things that's going to twig you to the fact that, hey, you could be possibly under attack. So just something else to consider there. But this is, again, why it's absolutely essential to monitor the traffic on that infrastructure that you're monitoring. And this one's very much specific. Again, general for all industries, but this one particularly applies to educational and government organizations that are trying to do more with less. Automate everything. Compliance is a major issue, and that means that you're going to want your network devices, especially routers and servers, configured in a particular way that doesn't violate any of the regulatory compliance requirements that you may very well be working under. And this is key because, you know, if someone adds a router or changes a router and says, okay, no, allow traffic on, you know, port 8080 for whatever reason, that could very well be a violation of your compliance. And that's going to be a problem if you ever get audited or if you have to later show that, hey, no one ever had access. If you've got a solution that will not only monitor all of those compliances, but automatically apply them every time you configure a new router, every time you add a new router, every time you move something, it can automatically ensure that it is configured the way you need it to be configured. And it's not a matter of you having to go down through a checklist or, you know, determine exactly how that specific system or device is configured. It's all stored, it's all saved, it can all be applied. And if something changes, again, you can get an alert. And if you want to be really paranoid, you can automatically revert that. Again, anything gets changed, it's a matter of one click to revert it back to its original setup. You can also put the old and the new setup side by side so you can see exactly what got changed. And again, if you know you've got a hard and fast rule that no traffic on port 8080, for example, anytime that changes, you can automatically revert it. We know we know from our customers that somewhere north of 60% of network problems are due to misconfigured devices. And if you can automate the configuration for all those devices, it's going to save you a lot of time and help make you more compliant. And I mentioned consolidation before, but this is also another key item. Being in IT can be very much like working in a car alarm factory. There's always something screaming for your attention. If you've got 15 different consoles and they are all alerting you to something, even if they're the same item, you're not necessarily going to know, and you're not necessarily going to be able to prioritize. You want to consolidate all of the alerts for anything going wrong with your network, no matter where it's occurring, all on one console, all through one system, so you can see what's going on. This also, by the way, allows you to resolve issues with dependencies. So if, for example, you've got one server and there's 15 other servers downstream, and that one server goes down, well, you're going to get 16 items screaming at you and saying, we've got a problem. You want something that's smart enough to say, no, ignore those other 15. This is the one that's important because they're not connected because it's not connected. That's a huge time saver. And these alerts need to be something that you can control. However, the best way it is for your organization, your group, your IT team to deal with these alerts, you want those alerts to come in that way. It could be a text, it could be email, it could be a web pop-up right in front of you. Or if there's a group of you and maybe someone's on vacation, maybe you're on vacation, you're not there to answer the alert, or maybe it's not your shift, have it come in through a group organization, like or a group tool like Slack or Teams. And that way, if you're busy or you're in a meeting or not around, someone else can pick it up and resolve it. So you're not looking at something going down for 3 days because no one noticed because that person wasn't at their desk. The whole advantage of this is it's going to allow you to get alerts for everything that goes wrong, whether it's a traffic bottleneck, bandwidth issue, hardware issue, a configuration change, some other form of performance problem. You're going to get alerted on it. And usually, before it starts impacting your end users, which is huge. If you can fix a problem before it impacts the end users, that is the holy grail of IT. And that's not me making that up. We've got a customer who says that all the time. The goal here is to increase efficiency. And if you put all of your alerts in one place, it's going to make you more efficient. And finally, reporting is key. And Some of this comes right down to being able to prove that you're compliant. You're always going to have to be able to pull up a report saying, here's how our systems are configured, here's how we're proving we're compliant with whatever regulation I'm dealing with. And I'm being purposely vague. There's tons of regulations that may or may not affect everyone. But if you've got a system that is doing all of this and can automatically spew out a report, that is worth its weight in gold. You can set up weekly, hourly reports if you want that automatically go out through email, or it can be automatically printed, or you can even set up a live link where anyone who wants to can just click on a link and see in real time exactly what the status is of, say, bandwidth or compliance or configurations or whatever you want. There's hundreds of different options that come out of the box, or it's very easy to create your own reports and your own dashboards. One of the big advantages of this is not only does it make it very easy to prove compliance and provide things like real-time asset inventory and compliance reports, but it also really proves the value of IT. Most of you are probably aware that IT tends to be the red-headed stepchild organization within any industry. If everything is working fine, why do we need to pay for IT? If everything's broken, well, why are we paying IT? Because everything's broken and they're not doing their job. It's a constant battle. You're constantly doing things, and the end users and the management never seem to notice. Well, if you've got a reporting system that's letting them know every week, hey, these are the attacks we repelled, these are the configuration changes that we reverted so that they didn't cost us massive fines for being out of compliance. These are the major bandwidth savings that we were able to do. Here's the 10 people who are trying to watch streaming video that we shut off immediately so that you, Mr. CEO, could have your Zoom meeting. That kind of information not only lets everyone else in the organization know what you're doing, but also raises your profile and lets people know, yeah, these guys are doing a lot. That can be really, really valuable when it comes to trying to negotiate budgets and saying we can't do more with less. We need new servers, we need another warm body, we need better monitoring software. So those are the kind of 6 best practices that we find work best. Obviously, we have a dog in this hunt, so I'm going to be fairly straightforward and make it clear that everything I just described is something that you can do with What's Up Gold, which is a network availability and performance at a glance monitoring solution. This is well established. We've been around for quite some time. We're very popular. We're easy to use. The main value of What's Up Gold, quite frankly, is to find and fix problems fast. It is a diagnostic tool that allows you to see what's happening in your network, to get alerted in any way you want to any issues, and hopefully resolve them before your end users notice. It's something that's completely vendor agnostic. We can show you everything in context. And we can make it very, very easy for you to stay on top of your network and what's going on with it. What specifically can you monitor with What's Up Gold? It's easy to say, what can't you monitor? You can monitor your devices, look for things like interface utilization, system servers, workstations. Are they using their memory, their storage? Are they running into capacity issues? All of your cloud resources, whether it's AWS or Azure, you can monitor those servers, the storage devices, other cloud resources like load balancers, even you can monitor, and how they're interacting with the rest of your network. We talked, or at least Scott, I believe, mentioned talking about older systems as well. When you're babying older hardware, you need to pay more attention to things like fans and power supplies, and are those things starting to overheat? Are they starting to wear out? Are we looking at potential hardware failures? Similarly, with virtual resources, easy to spin up a virtual server, a lot harder to remember what you did with it, whether it's being used, what physical device it's on, how much CPU, how much memory that thing's using. Is that thing something that was spun up for training a year ago and no one's used it since and doesn't need to be there anymore? That's exactly the sort of thing that you can determine with a tool like What's Up Gold. And then finally, wireless. Are you getting adequate bandwidth? Are you getting adequate signal strength? Do you need to deploy additional wireless access points or just move the ones you have? These are all questions you can answer with What's Up Gold. So having said all of that, I know you're sitting back there going, okay, that's great, Mark, but is this all vaporware or is it real? Well, let me give you a couple of examples. Here's a mid-sized municipality in Southern California, the city of Pleasanton. They've been a What's Up Gold customer for some time, and of course they are subject to a number of different regulations, as well as having the same problems that any organization has of keeping the network up and running. They were actually a beta tester for our relatively recent log management capability that we've added to WhatsUp Gold. And they liked it so much, they demanded an extended license until they could actually put together a purchase order, which, being a municipality, took them a while. They found that not only are they using WhatsUp Gold to keep track of every single device, every single system and server, including mission critical ones like police and fire and ambulance that they're related to, but also they were finding that the log management solution was alerting them to various log errors that they wouldn't have noticed in any other way. They had a misconfigured server that did not have permissions to access one particular application, and it was constantly pinging. So there was bandwidth being eaten up, there was a potential failure going on there, and there's no way they would have known about that until either it broke or until they noticed the log management alerts in the log management system. And, that was the sort of thing that made them say, no, that's it, we need this, we want this. And like all of our customers, their goal is responding faster to problems and being able to see all of the alerts at one point and resolve issues before they start impacting people, like the 911 system, for example, or the police dispatch system. School board example is the Danville area school board, or school district rather. This one's a slightly older one, but at the tail end of 2019, as COVID lockdowns hit, they found themselves having to plan for remote learning. And they were fortunate that they've been rolling out laptops to all of their students and their teachers. And they took the summer break to develop, frankly, a really impressive remote teaching system. They pretty much set up every single one of their teachers with a full studio that they could use in the classroom or take home if they had to quarantine. It included, webcams, Zoom capabilities, projectors and projector cams, and as well as document cams. And the idea was whether the kids were in the classroom or at home, they'd be able to see the exact same thing, have the same level of interaction, and the teacher could teach as normal and display that information to everyone. In fact, they even leveraged it at one point when they were running short of substitute teachers, which is a major issue, that they had one teacher who was teaching two classes, the other was across the hall, and they just had a warm-body adult in there to make sure the kids weren't goofing off, but they could do the same class in multiple areas. All of this required a ton of additional equipment. It also required a ton of additional bandwidth and a lot of flexibility. And WhatsUp Gold was the key to allowing them to be able to implement all of this. Every single one of those new devices they were able to monitor to ensure that if it was having problems or if it was failing or if it went down, they could respond immediately. Similarly, bandwidth. If any teacher or a school or a child, any class ever started to have bandwidth issues, they could usually see the problem coming and resolve it before it started impacting things. The result was a completely seamless transition to both remote and to hybrid learning. They're in a situation right now where they don't even care whether or not the student or the teacher is in the school. They can still get the same education and still get them the same information. It's really quite impressive. And if you care, we've got a much longer webinar we did about a year ago that goes into all of this in tremendous detail. So these are solutions that are actually working. They're working in the field. They're working for educational organizations. They're working for municipalities and other governmental organizations. We've done this. We can help. And if you've got any questions, I'll be more than happy to go into them.
Absolutely, yeah. Great presentation, Mark. We do have some questions for you coming in here from the audience. While we take those questions, I'm just going to bring up a poll for everyone out there that says, what additional information would you like about the Progress software solution? Of course, specifically today, we're talking about what's up. So, Mark, let's see. First question I wanted to ask you here. This is a good one. Rob is asking if you can provide any sort of high-level, common, return on investment example that customers use to justify the cost of WhatsUp Gold to senior management.
That's a really, really good question. The cost of WhatsUp Gold is going to vary depending on the size of your network. We price by device effectively. So if you have 15 devices you want to monitor, that's a completely different price than if you have 300. In general, it's actually a little bit easier, we find, for both government and educational organizations to justify this cost, simply because of the massive fines and the massive costs of being out of compliance. If you can prove that you are able to resolve issues, improve your mean time to repair, and simply keep everything compliant, that makes a big, big difference. If you're sitting here saying, I need, let's say, $5,000 to $10,000 to justify the software expenditure, and we get a $20,000 fine for every single one of these compliance violations, and this will help prevent that from ever happening. That should be a pretty good pitch to a pretty strong argument to get something implemented. And we'd be more than happy, of course, to have our SEs and our team help walk you and your bosses through. If you need help putting together an actual ROI, we'd be happy to help out with that. But honestly, this is not IBM level expensive. I don't want to give price ranges, obviously, because everything is different, but our solutions can start as low as $2,000, and our average sale tends to be in the $10,000 to $20,000 range. Again, don't quote me on that because they can obviously go up depending on what you're trying to do. But we're not talking, break the bank sort of costs. This is something that's quite reasonable considering the amount of time and potential expense that it can spare. We often say this in other organizations as well. When your network goes down, how much money are you losing? And depending on your organization, it can be anywhere from hundreds of dollars to a minute to hundreds of thousands of dollars a minute. But these days, especially with people working remotely, if the network's down, no one's working. What's that costing you? And if you can prevent that, what's that worth?
Absolutely. Yeah. Great points all around there. Let's see. Another question here. They're wanting to know what's it take to get started with this? Is there a free trial? What's the best way to kind of take this for a test drive?
There's two really easy ways. The simplest way is just go to whatsupgold.com, and on every single page is a big red free trial button. Hit that, and you can download a free trial. It's got every single feature, every single capability. I think supports up to 2,500 devices. It might be 5,000. I can't recall now, but it's tons. And you can download it, install it. It installs in less than half an hour. The first thing it will do is discover your entire network, and then you're in and you can start playing with it. It's very easy to use. If you don't want to bother with that, you can also go to whatsupgold.com, and on the menu there's a resources tab. There's an interactive demo under that tab, and you can click on it and you can play with What's Up Gold. It's all web-based, and you can play with a live version of it right there and get a good look at it, get a feel for it, see for yourself how easy it is to use, see how everything's mapped, get an idea, and if you have more questions, you can either download a free trial from there or get in touch with us.
Very nice. Yeah, it sounds like it's super easy to get started. I used What's Up Gold many, many years ago. It's always been a great product. So it sounds like it could help a lot of folks out here, especially in public sector organizations. I'm afraid we've run out of time here in our live Q&A session, but I see about 20 other questions for you there in the electronic queue, Mark. Maybe you can get back to some of those folks. But we really appreciate your presentation.
No problem. We'll take those questions and we will respond to you guys all individually via email. Thanks very much. And feel free to visit whatsupgold.com if other questions come up to you. You can always reach out to us and contact us there, and we will get back to you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.